Hi everyone. I'm doing a video today. So my channel is about coaching and mental health topics and things that I learn, but also I want to put up resources that pertain to domestic violence as well, including any kind of marriages or relationships that have involved emotional or psychological abuse, maybe not physical, because those relationships get very complicated when they end. And especially if they're, let's say you're in court and you're trying to, come up with some sort of custody arrangement and visitation schedule. I have been there. I have done that. A lot of people have been there and done that. And it's not always super easy, especially if you're in a high conflict kind of divorce case, which typically involves a cluster B personality disorder, not necessarily in both people. Sometimes I think maybe I don't have a statistic, but probably a lot of times it's only one person with the personality disorder. So in order to help and put out resources to that effect, I am putting up peer-reviewed articles because I am in graduate school. So I get access to a lot of articles that the general public can probably find. However, I get them they're not for free because I'm paying tuition, but I get to download them as PDF files directly to my computer. And that's what I have been doing. And so I'm going to, for anyone in a high conflict situation right now in court with a high conflict person, whether they are or are not diagnosed with a personality disorder, I'm going to put up a list of peer-reviewed articles that I have found might possibly be helpful to bring to court, whether you're representing yourself or whether you have an attorney. I specifically went through and looked for peer-reviewed articles, which means they have more credibility because they have been reviewed by professionals in that industry. And so the articles that I'm going to put a list to down below in the description, and I'm also going to insert in my video here, if I can, I'm going to insert some screenshots of the title pages as well. So when you're looking at an APA, American Psychological Association article, you have the abstract at the top, and that's a general idea of what the study is on. And then you scroll down and you've got a lot of details. Some of them are very clinical, some of them are very long. So I always recommend looking at the abstract first. If you do not have access to these types of articles through a school library, you can probably, like I said, I went directly through our online library hub. So I have not found these through Google, but I'm putting the list here because I think you probably can find them through Google. Specifically, the reason I wanted to put the screenshots of the title pages, that most of them have the journal publication. So go ahead and either Google it or go to that journal's website and type in the article title and see if you can get a copy of it for yourself if you can't get it through a library. And the topics that I picked were basically, because sometimes you have a parent who's definitely being verbally, psychologically, emotionally abusive. That's really, really hard to prove in court, right? So, and then there's other cases where you have a parent who's spanking, which is legal in most states in the United States, by the way. So there's no mark. So you're going to call CPS and they're not going to be able to do anything because it didn't leave a mark, even though the child was terrified afterwards. So I went through specifically and looked for articles that have to do with custody in the court system, how an abuser can use the court system as an extension of abuse because he's no longer married to the spouse. And I found a peer-reviewed article on that. I've looked for emotional effects of emotional abuse on children in terms of physical health, behavior issues. You have a lot of emotional dysregulation in children who are living in a toxic family system. So the kid that's, I don't know, like having a tantrum, and I'm not talking toddlers, I'm talking older kids who scream and yelling, can't regulate their emotions in school. You have to look at the home, what's going on there. And so I found articles that talk about emotional regulation, physical health, when there's emotional abuse involved. For sure, you want to familiarize yourself, if you don't already know about it, with the ACEs study. The CDC and Kaiser Permanente did an ACE study. It's called Adverse Childhood Experiences. And everybody in that study, you go through, and you should take it yourself. Everybody should take this test. But you go through and take a series of questions. Did you witness violence? Were you ever violated? Were you verbally abused, things like that. And so it talks about, and the higher your score, the less, the harder you're going to have in adulthood without some therapy and things like that. And so I believe I can put the link to the ACEs study. That's public. I can't remember. I'm going to put all the links below. I also looked up, so basically I looked up peer-reviewed articles that talk about this topic, emotional abuse from a parent to a child. What are the effects? Another one, I found one about parental alienation syndrome. That is a kind of non-verified syndrome but really the people who tend to use that the most, claiming, parental alienation or not being allowed to see their kids, and blaming the mom. Usually it's the mom, it might be the dad in some cases, but blaming the other parent, the healthy parent, for alienating. And so I found a peer-reviewed article that says parental alienation syndrome is not scientific, really. And so I'm going to put that in there too. That's very important, because a lot of you guys are probably going to go into court and your ex is going to be accusing you of all sorts of things. And I can't remember if I found a peer-reviewed article that talked about when an ex is accusing the other parent of abuse. And there's some things I wouldn't recommend bringing. I would say read through everything. Be very careful what you bring, because some of these things can be taken out of context, and then it makes you like the bad guy and not them. And because everything can be flipped. So be very careful about what you bring into court with you. So I'm hoping this has been helpful to anybody in this. If you find yourself in that kind of situation, I hope this video is helpful to you. So yeah, it's important to keep in mind the flippability factor. I think I just made that phrase up, but everything can be flipped. So you have to be really careful. That's also why it's important to bring peer-reviewed articles, because these are more professionally accepted. Now, is a judge going to accept these? I can't say for sure, but I have done a little bit of Googling, and I am fairly certain most courtrooms will accept peer review articles. They may not accept regular articles, but it's a peer review means a study has been done, and it has the statistical data within it, usually in the article, in the paper, and then it's also been reviewed by other peers. So that's why I wouldn't recommend taking anything to court, but I would recommend considering taking these. So, but also consider whether or not that can be flipped, and don't bring. So that's why it's good to review and go through and read, and skim anything you want to bring, and don't bring anything that's maybe that same thing could apply to you. But when it's emotional abuse, and there's statistics that say this is what happens, and you know that hopefully you're not being verbally or emotionally abusive, but you're fairly certain that your ex is, the best thing to do is bring those articles. But you also need to get, if possible, some kind of counseling And there are a lot of facilities that offer sliding scale fees, but you're going to need to get some counseling and say, for your kids, and say, I think this is what's been going on. This is what they're telling me when they come home from visits. What should I do? Kind of keep it about the kids. And it is about the kids. In the end of the day, it's about the best interest of the kids. None of this should be out of vindication or, yes, when someone's unhealthy and they have damage to you, it is it will make you angry, but you have to process that outside of the courtroom and process all of that outside of even counseling sessions for your kids. Do everything with the children in mind, because you don't want to raise another abuser, right? So I would say, in conjunction with peer-reviewed articles, try and get some counselor testimony. And if a written letter from your counselor is not admissible, you may be able, different states have different rules. You may be able to get an amicus attorney or a guardian ad litem, and there's different terms for this. But these are the court officials, the court advocates that talk to the kids directly. Hopefully your kid doesn't have to go march up and into a courtroom in front of a judge with both parents there, because that's going to make them awkward. So that's why I do suggest getting counseling on your own for those kids, and also talk to the counselor and say, what do I do? What? Because counselors are not legal professionals, but especially if you've got a licensed clinical social worker, they can do counseling, but they also know about the social work system. So they don't know, they're not attorneys, but they know a little bit about that world. So those are my suggestions. I hope this video has been helpful to anybody. If you have any questions, go ahead and comment below. I check this channel pretty regularly, and I like to get back to people. Go ahead and click like and hit the subscribe and then the bell for notifications. This is a new channel, but I am growing it as I'm transitioning into a new career. But I've also been in that courtroom situation, and it's difficult. And so I'm just sharing what, may be helpful to other people out there. Okay? Have a great day.